When I reviewed the Google Pixel 5, you guys relentlessly asked me how does it compare to the S20 FE and the Pixel 4a 5G. Now, the former device I've already reviewed now, so do check it down in the description below, but this video will be concentrating on the 4a 5G and why I actually think this is potentially the best phone, at least for my use case. Now, if you're interested in purchasing it, the links in the description below will take you to relevant stores. And yet again, shout out to Vodafone for providing me samples of these phones for me to deliver these unbiased, unpaid videos for you guys to watch. Now, in the description, you'll find a link to my Instagram, that's at TotallyDubbed, and yes, that's a shameless plug. And if you're interested in all electric or hybrid news or reviews, do check out Totally EV, your support would be equally appreciated. So let's kick things off and talk about the build quality and design. And here is something that the 4a 5G falls short in comparison to the Pixel 5. Now, the Pixel 5 has this kind of aluminium design. It's also got IP68 rating and this feel that is really nice in order for you to, well, just feel more secure when you're holding the phone. The Pixel 4a 5G unfortunately does not have IP68 rating, doesn't have wireless charging capabilities, and has a very much slippery design. So something definitely of a downgrade over the Pixel 5. However, the rest of the phone's design is pretty much similar, other than the fact that the Pixel 4a 5G only comes in a black color, so it doesn't have that sage color that you find on the Pixel 5. There's a rear fingerprint sensor, which is fantastic, although the lack of facial recognition is still somewhat baffling in the 4a 5G, very much like the Pixel 5 in comparison to, let's say, older Pixel devices. You've got a slightly protruding camera at the back, you've got a volume rocker and a power on and off button on the right hand side, and on the left hand side you've got a SIM tray. The thing which really sets itself aside, and we'll get onto this in just a bit, is the fact that the Pixel 4a 5G has a physical 3.5mm jack, something that the Pixel 5 does not have, and likewise with a physical speaker poised at the top of the phone, meaning that you get just a better stereo experience. And as I mentioned, we'll get onto audio quality in just a moment. Now, moving on, we've got the actual display itself. Now, first off, in terms of the coating, the Pixel 5 uses Corning Glass 6, whilst the 4a 5G uses Corning Glass 3, so therefore a little bit better scratch and drop resistance in the Pixel 5 over here. Elsewhere, it might be pretty obvious, but the size of the phones also differ, and in this respect, the Pixel 4a 5G has a 6.2-inch OLED, while the Pixel 5 uses a 6-inch OLED instead. Now, both phones will run on FHD+, so that's 1080 x 2340, and as a result, the pixel density on the Pixel 5 will look just a little bit sharper. But does this impact in terms of overall day-to-day usage? No. The thing which will, however, change your opinion is the fact that the Pixel 5 runs on a 90Hz display, or at least has the option to run on 90Hz, while the Pixel 4a 5G is limited to 60Hz. This means that there is a more fluid experience on the 5, and furthermore makes for just a better experience. If you then look at the S20 FE that runs 120Hz, that even takes things even further and puts the 4a 5G a little bit to shame in this respect. So it would have been nice to see 90Hz display option on the 4a 5G, and truthfully that's one of the biggest things I missed when it came to coming from the Pixel 5 going to the Pixel 4a 5G. And now we get on to audio quality, and this is really important for me when it comes to using a phone on a daily basis, because not only do I watch a lot of content on my smartphone without a device connected, but I also use my phone in terms of connecting up to a 3.5mm headphone, earphone, or indeed, let's say, my car's in-car audio system. Now, in this respect, what I'm going to do is give you a little audio snippet and demo of the built-in speakers, and then get onto my subjective analysis. And this video, if you want to see it, will be down in the description below. It's on Totally EV's channel. The Nissan Leaf, from its looks, practicality, and even from its price, where it starts from just shy of £31,000. Now, if you'd like a more detailed comparison to the Nissan Leaf, from its looks, practicality, and even from its price, where it starts from just shy of £31,000. Now, if you'd like a more detailed comparison of the two. Now, in terms of that small little audio snippet that I gave you, and I'm not sure if my microphone will pick it up properly, you get a much better stereo image and experience on the 4a 5G, and that's truthfully because of that physical speaker that's housed at the top of the phone. the built-in speaker within the display of the Pixel 5 just can't really reproduce those better tones and that better soundstage that you would experience. So in this case, the sound sounds just a little bit more lifelike on the Pixel 4a 5G, whilst on the Pixel 5 sounds a little bit accentuated and just a little bit more artificial sounding. Now the same goes when it comes to call quality, because call quality is obviously very important because we're talking about a smartphone over here, and the Pixel 4a 5G does a better job because, well, ultimately it doesn't need to have as louder of a volume because, well, the physical speaker is planted in your ears, whereas the built-in physical speaker that's housed underneath the display of the Pixel 5 just doesn't give you that same sort of experience. And sometimes if you're trying to hear someone on the other side of the phone call and you're in a busy environment, then the Pixel 5 will just come across as just a little bit more faint. So these are things which are very much important. Now, to give you also a little bit of a snippet as to how it sounds in terms of audio quality, in terms of listening to music, I'm going to go into a little audio demo over here using my friend's song. It's from Priya, and the song name is called Falling. So hopefully there you were able to pick out that Priya's voice and just the overall song just sounds a lot better on the Pixel 4a 5G than it does on the Pixel 5. That just sounds not only muffled, but just lacks that type of dynamism that you would expect. I should also mention that since my Pixel 5 review, a feature called Adaptive Sound has come out, and it's very much the case with the Pixel 4a 5G. Now this feature does work actually pretty well in terms of accentuating the bass and high tones just a little bit better, and in this respect the adaptive sound is something I would definitely recommend enabling if you're going to be listening to content on your phone. So no matter where you are positioned, then it's going to give you a slightly better experience. It's not going to be life-changing, but it's just a little bit of a better, almost like a slightly better EQ, let's put it that way. And now we get onto raw performance, and the Pixel 4a 5G houses the same processor and chipset as the Pixel 5. Unsurprisingly, the Snapdragon 765G just doesn't compete with its competitors, namely from Samsung, for example, the Exynos 990 or the Snapdragon 865, for example, that's found in the S20 FE. In real-world experiences, however, the fluidity and stock Android feel that you get with the 4a 5G is equivalent to the Pixel 5, and while it might not compete in terms of synthetic benchmarks or indeed high-end gaming, what you'll find is that the overall experience that you get with the 4a 5G is very much like the Pixel 5, and in this respect it's absolutely excellent in order to use it on a day-to-day basis. You won't notice any lag or any sort of problems, and if you're using multiple different apps, the amount of RAM at disposal is great. Now it's worth bearing in mind the RAM is a little bit downgraded over the Pixel 5, but from my experiences as using this phone as a daily driver, I didn't have any issues whatsoever, and therefore I can very much say that the performance is very much adequate and will definitely suffice for a lot of consumers out there. Now next up we've got battery life, and here I was very much intrigued because despite the phone's slightly larger size, the Pixel 4a 5G actually has a smaller battery pack than the Pixel 5. It sits at 3,885 mAh versus the 4,080 mAh, at least according to some sites and indeed Google. Now in this respect, the Pixel 4a 5G actually performed better in my synthetic benchmark in terms of controlled benchmark test. Here the phone achieved 22 hours and 45 minutes in comparison to the 21 hours achieved by the Pixel 5. Now both phones actually perform very well in this domain, and of course won't compete with some other phones out there, but on the whole this basically means you can use the phone at pretty much medium to high usage for the entire day without having to reach for a charger. And that was very much my own experience after using this phone as a daily driver. I just didn't feel that the battery life was an issue. If anything, it was actually really impressive, and coming from my Samsung Galaxy S10 Plus, which is now over a year old and a full year of usage, it was nice to see how well the Pixel 4a 5G actually performed with a relatively smaller battery pack in comparison to its sibling, the Pixel 5. And now we get on to camera, the thing which really sets aside the Pixel devices from other phones out there, namely due to their post-processing abilities. Now here the Pixel 4a 5G has the exact same setup as the Pixel 5. At the rear you've got a 12.2 megapixel shooter that runs at f1.7 aperture, and you've got an ultra-wide 16 megapixel camera that runs at f2.2. Unsurprisingly, the performance between the Pixel 4a 5G and the Pixel 5 are absolutely identical. Throughout the shots, which you will be able to see over here, the two phones are absolutely identical and look in the same way. Absolutely stunning. So for example, in this shot over here where you can see the trees, the foliage looks pretty much the same, and while there are some sort of slight discrepancies between the two phones, that's just because of how I held them and the focus area, they are absolutely incredible in terms of how they reproduce a beautiful, vivid tone and yet preserve as much detail as possible. Now they are limited to 12.2 megapixels, so they won't compete with higher megapixel count cameras, but truthfully when it comes to actually using it as a daily driver, I don't think most people will care about this, specifically if they're not going to be blowing it up on a massive canvas. Now the same could be said about the macro shots and its macro ability, again providing really good detail at a pretty close focus range. And again, the same could be said when it takes to low light conditions, and here is where the Pixel devices really stand out in comparison to, let's say, Samsung flagship devices or indeed Samsung mid-tier phones, because the low light performance that the Pixel phones are able to reproduce is insanely good. Specifically if you were to turn on night mode, where images just look a little bit more vivid. And now while they will take a little bit of an extra second to capture and stitch up the images, on the whole it is a fantastic experience and one that I think a lot of people will appreciate. As for the selfie camera, now here you've got a front 8 megapixel f2.0, and here what you'll see is that yet again the Pixel device does a fantastic job, both the 5 and the 4a 5G, in terms of capturing my face and also the background itself and stitching it up in a very competent manner in order to preserve the overall tonality of the image. Now the only thing I will say, however, and something I did come across quite oddly on the 4a 5G than I did on the Pixel 5, which really shouldn't matter, and it's something a few users reported, namely on Twitter, and if you know who you are, shout out to you. It's the fact that there is a bit of a shutter delay with the Pixel 4a 5G, something I didn't really notice on the Pixel 5, namely when I was doing the review of it. In terms of you clicking really fast on the shutter, what you'll find is sometimes it delays and just struggles to take multiple shots. Even when it comes to even deleting images on terms of like a batch delete, in terms of you deleting, on the Samsung devices it's really seamless and really fast, whilst on the Pixel devices, both on the 5 and the 4a 5G, it's just a little bit tedious and takes some time and can be irritating when you've got, let's say, several screenshots you want to delete and you don't want to go into your files or your internal storage in order to do a multi-select and delete. Now what I'm trying to say over here is that these faults, so to speak, with the phones can be resolved with a firmware update later down the line, but at the time of making this video I have to take as to what I've got in front of me, and in this respect this user experience, despite the fantastic fluid experience of the software, doesn't quite translate to the camera app or the gallery app or whatever you want to call it. So it's just something you should worth bearing in mind, and something I didn't point out in my Pixel 5 review because I didn't have any problems, whereas with the 4a 5G, it's something that I definitely thought I should highlight. And finally, to round off the camera section, it's its video capabilities. Now, very much like the Pixel 5, it is limited in terms of how it can record, specifically in terms of its selfie camera. It's 1080p 30fps, which is pretty a shame, but at the rear you've got 4K 60 FPS at your disposal, and you can also record with EIS and OIS enabled. In other words, you got image stabilization, and the image stabilization is insanely good for a Pixel device and actually is extremely good in comparison to all other smartphones out there, even let's say the iPhones that I've seen reviewed, or even let's say the flagship Samsung devices. The Pixel devices hold their own in this domain. So unlike previous iterations of Pixel phones, and something as I highlighted in my Pixel 5 review, that this is, you know, the best in terms of video capabilities that Google has been able to reproduce, and the video stabilization options at your disposal just make it for a much better overall better user experience when it comes to shooting movies or, you know, videos or whatever it might be on your phone. In comparison to what it was in the past. And this all leads me on to my verdict. What do I make about the 4a 5G? Well, quite frankly, I think this is potentially the best Google Pixel phone, at least for me. Now, not everyone is going to care about stereo speakers or a 3.5mm jack, and if you are someone who doesn't care about those features, then the Pixel 5 will probably be the better shout because it has just more features. So for example, the wireless charging, the smaller form factor, the nice sort of feel at the back, and the 90Hz display. But otherwise, the Pixel 4a 5G is an excellent alternative and actually comes in at a slightly cheaper price, making it for a little bit more of an alluring option for those people who might not have the budget, or those people like myself who actually want and prioritize audio quality. And in this respect, the 4a 5G definitely comes out on top due to having those physical jack and speakers at your disposal in comparison to the Pixel 5. Now, should the 4a 5G sit well in the market? Absolutely. I think in comparison to other phones out there you can find on the market, given its price tag, it's actually a very good phone and an extremely good alternative to what else you can find out there outside of the Google Pixel family. So that's just my thoughts and opinions about it. Do let me know in the comments below what your thoughts are on the 4a 5G. I'll be intrigued to hear your thoughts. And of course, if you do like this video, give it a like, subscribe to see more, and favorite and share as always help the channel grow. Alright, I've been Totally Dubbed. Take care, and bye-bye.